the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
If you're focused only on acquiring new donors, don't. I mean it. Wait, what? When it comes to nonprofit fundraising, there's a common misconception that acquiring new donors should be the ultimate goal. And this isn't without reason, of course. The more donors you have in your portfolio, the larger your fundraising revenue will likely be. However, that's not the full story. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Cara, fundraising coach at Donorbox. We're here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. Earlier on the Nonprofit Podcast, we introduced the 5 A's of awesome fundraising. Do you remember them? So first, you attract supporters to your organization. Then you ask them to come alongside you by giving. Then you promptly acknowledge their contributions of any size. Then you account for the money they've entrusted to you, and you repeat it again and again. Attracting new donors should be a priority for your nonprofit, but it should be far from the top one. In fact, retaining the same donors yields significantly more benefits than continuously trying to acquire new ones. Today, we have Jena Lynch, nonprofit advocate at Donorbox here. Welcome, Jena.
Hey, Cara. Thanks for having me. Okay, so you're going to have to break this down for me. How on earth can it not be a good thing to acquire more donors to support our cause? I mean, logically speaking, shouldn't more donors always be better?
You really have to acquire donors at some point, but I'm just saying it shouldn't be the biggest priority. And so I understand this perspective, Jena, and it's a common belief. However, let's take a closer look at the bigger picture and consider the realities of donor acquisition. What do you think?
All right, I'm all yours. Enlighten me.
Okay. Well, for one thing, it costs more money to acquire new donors. So if you're spending all your time trying to find new people to give to your organization, you could be missing out on opportunities to build relationships with existing donors. It's sometimes 10 times more expensive to acquire new donors than to invest a little time and effort into creating relationships with those existing donors.
So you're saying that by focusing solely on acquiring new donors, we might be neglecting our current supporters.
Exactly. So I've been in many board meetings where we talk to no end about how to get new donors. And the most commonly asked question to our team at Donorbox, Jena, you get this as much as I do, is how do I get new donors? There are so many articles and so much advice on how to find donors. And while there are definitely things you can do and you should be doing to attract new donors to your organization and make your organization attractive to all supporters, if your only focus is on getting new donors, don't.
So you're suggesting we shift our focus to something else. What would that be?
So yeah, exactly. So instead, focus on earning the second gift. So focus less on just acquiring the first gift, but making sure you have practices in place so your donors continue to stay with your organization and support you. So earn that second gift. And I promise, if you spend the same amount of energy on creating meaningful touches with existing donors, it will have a very, very high rate of return for you.
I see a lot of value in that approach, and I hope our listeners will too. So building strong relationships with our current donors is always a smart move. I absolutely agree there. So what are you seeing in the sector right now regarding donor acquisition and retention?
2 really big things are standing out to me right now. So first, for the first time in a few years, both dollars and donors are down for many nonprofits. That means nonprofits are raising less money and donors are leaving.
So the competition for support is becoming even more intense?
It is. And the second trend I'm seeing is that donors are supporting fewer organizations. A few years ago, a typical donor supported 3 to 5 organizations. You wanted to be in the top 5 that they supported. Now we're seeing that they're supporting about 2.5 to 3 organizations. And so now you're vying to be in the top 2 that they support.
That's a really significant shift. So that really puts even more pressure on nonprofits to stand out and really maintain a strong relationship with their donors, right?
Yeah. And I feel like I'm usually really enthusiastic and positive, but I think this donor retention problem needs a lot of attention right now. It's dire. It's kind of really bad news for the sector altogether, but it's really not impossible to fix. So every year you're losing donors. There's some natural attrition. So some lose interest, some have fewer resources, some may pass away or move away. And so, how does your organization's donor retention or loyalty rates compare to the field? So, what's considered good is something that you'll have to evaluate.
And I think that's a really important question, Cara. Nonprofits need to know where they stand compared to the industry standard. So, do you have any insights on what's considered a good donor retention rate?
I do. So, let's start first with where to look for a good benchmark for your nonprofit. And I'd recommend following the quarterly reports from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, or FEP. Right now, they report that the average donor retention for nonprofit organizations across the sector is right around 42.6%. So that's gone down over time. And new donor retention, that's at 19% right now. So that means over 80% of your new donors won't come back. So for every 100 donors that you might have come through the door through a Giving Tuesday campaign or something that you're doing on social media, only 20 of them, 19 or 20 of them are going to actually stay around till next year. And so I know I just said that those are considered good. So benchmarks, industry standards, measuring yourself against those, but they're really not great. Keeping that 42.6% of your donors might not sound really bad on the surface, but for every 2 steps forward, you're taking 3 steps backward. And if you flip the picture, you have more than half, almost 60% actually, of your donors walking away from your nonprofit into the waiting arms of another nonprofit every single year. Those other organizations might be showing your supporters a little more love. If that keeps up, there might not be anyone left to support you, or you're going to have to work extra hard to find new donors or bring your past donors back into the mix. And that is a lot of work. I've been in board meetings and attended seminars, and we as a nonprofit sector seem to be okay with this 40-ish% of donor retention. To compare it to the business world or the retail industry, those customer retention numbers might mean you need to close your doors in the business sector. So I did a little research, and retailers strive for a 65% retention. Banks start firing management for less than 75% retention. And media and professional services are even higher. They're keeping about 85% of their customers year over year. And that's just really incredible, but kind of dire when you compare it to the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, wow, those stats are super eye-opening, and it's kind of alarming to think that the nonprofit sector seems to be accepting this 40-ish% of donor retention as normal. But when you compare this rate to the customer retention numbers in the business world, it's really clear that there's a lot of room for improvement for us. You mentioned earlier that it's not impossible to fix. So there's a deep breath here. So, what can we actually do about it? We love practical actions here on the Nonprofit Podcast. So, what practical steps can nonprofits take to improve their donor retention rates and ensure that long-term support?
It is not impossible at all. In fact, it's more simple than it might seem. And now, summer season is a terrific time to put some quick fixes in place, especially when you aren't actively running a fundraising campaign or promoting an event. You might have time to do it. And it's important to keep communicating with your donors. That year-round consistency is really key to retaining their support. After all, you don't want anybody to forget you. So I'll ask you this, Jenna. Do you know why donors stop giving to nonprofits? There's been some research done on this. What do you think?
Yes, donors often stop giving because they aren't sure that their gifts were truly needed or sadly even appreciated.
Absolutely, yeah. This research by Dr. Adrian Sargent also said that donors stopped giving because they didn't get thanked, or they received poor service, or they didn't even remember making the gift. And that just seems really incredible to me.
I can totally believe that. And it's so important to stay in front of your donors and maintain that presence, especially after hearing that, and especially during a summer fundraising slowdown. Reminding donors about your mission and the impact of their contributions can really significantly boost those donations and then keep your donors coming back. That's the important part.
Absolutely. And I have 3 things you can do right now to stay on top of things this summer. It's a little blend of actions you can take right now to shore up your processes and your operations, and then a little something you can do to delight your donors so they remember you when it's time to give.
That sounds great. I love this digestible and practical approach you're taking because this could be intimidating to some, but it really doesn't have to be. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Okay, first, know your numbers and stay on top of them. Do you know how to calculate your donor retention rate? Your donor retention rate is the percentage of all donors who gave in 2 consecutive years. So you divide the number of repeat donors this year by those that donated last year. Or if it's easier, I created a calculator you can find at donorbox.org to help you with the calculation, and I'll put that in the show notes. But basically, you want to know that number because strong donor retention rates can help predict revenue for your organization and improve some meaningful engagement. It can help you earn larger donations and it can help you budget better because you know that you can expect those year after year. And while organizations with a high retention rate keep or renew many donors from year to year, those with a low rate, you have to spend more to acquire new donors to keep your bottom line above water and then build the program to keep them warm and engaged year after year. So know your number and then stay on top of that rate. So monitor it monthly and watch it grow throughout the year. I would recommend including it in a monthly report to your board of directors so they are aware too. They can help reach out to donors who haven't given yet this year. So that's my first tip. And then next, number 2, take 20 minutes to update your online giving receipt. They may seem like a simple administrative task, but they're actually a really valuable opportunity to express gratitude and reinforce the impact you're making in this world. You'll have your gift details on there for sure, but you can also include a story from a beneficiary, or you can add a link to a special thank you video. It's really easy to customize your automatic donation receipts. There are email formats in Donorbox. You can make a test donation to your organization and then see what shows up in your inbox and work from there to make it better.
You know, I love that tip, Cara. I actually had the opportunity to help some of our Donorbox orgs with their donation receipts earlier this week. And I have a great donation receipt template that we'll include in today's show notes if anyone would like to take a look for some inspiration to see what those should really look like. A really well-designed donation receipt not only, like you said, helps express your gratitude, but also helps donors who might forget about their gift. It's like that little reminder of their generosity. All right, so what's next? What else can nonprofits do to keep their donors engaged and happy?
Okay, last but certainly not least, say thank you. While you have a little extra time on your hands, maybe it's during a summer fundraising slump or another time, you can use that time to show gratitude to your supporters for their generosity throughout the year. It means so much more when you say thank you out of the blue without an ask attached, and donors will remember how grateful you were the next time you do ask them for a gift. And you can do that a couple ways. You know, a handwritten thank you note is always awesome. You can take a stack of personal stationery or some branded note cards outside and write some notes in the sun, and then make some personal phone calls. Don't ask them for a gift of any kind. Simply share your gratitude and a quick anecdote about what their gift accomplished. Get to know your donors better by asking them questions such as why they support your mission or ways they'd like to be contacted in the future. So really easy, but very impactful right there.
I love that. This person-to-person approach. These don't seem too difficult. So why do these things get overlooked, do you think?
I think a lot of times these common courtesies just fall off our to-do list because we've got a lot going on. And when it's slower this summer, you can make time to do it. Commit an hour or a block of time to do these. And maybe a good question to ask too is why? Why should we do them? And the answer is because it's the right thing to do. It's morally and ethically the right thing to do. So treat your donors well because you should, and delight them with some common courtesy. And then why else? It's because it's a smart thing to do from a business perspective for your organization. You want to keep delivering programs that change lives. You want to keep the lights on. So that means you need to treat your donors well because that's how you raise money to do these things. So remember, again, the focus is on earning that second gift, being intentional and putting your best foot forward. You care so much about your mission and the people or the animals you serve. Your supporters make that work happen. And your work to create and sustain a relationship with those supporters might deserve just as much of your focus and attention as delivering on your mission.
The basic idea here is that donors are people who are willing to give money or resources to help your organization achieve its goals. And when someone gives your organization something valuable like money or time or even their ideas, you have this deep responsibility to show how those things have made an impact and how much you appreciate them by using those things well and responsibly. And that way, your donors know that their gift was actually worth it. And maybe they'll be more likely to give again next time. And I think it's more than a maybe. And then it grows your organization by increasing those donations, that engagement, and that all important retention.
It can seem overwhelming, but it really doesn't have to be. I have an idea that you can do today. As soon as you finish this podcast, surprise your donors or a group of your most loyal donors right out of the blue. Send a thank you note or make a phone call. Not in response to a gift they made. Nope, just because.
You know, I've come across some really creative approaches that organizations use to delight their donors, as you say, Cara. And one idea that stands out is printing postcards featuring a captivating image of their nonprofit in action. And they include a heartfelt message of thanks on the back and then take the extra step of handwriting a personalized note. So going into your CRM, looking at your past communications, seeing what you've talked about, and really personalizing that note. And imagine the joy it brings to find such a thoughtful surprise in your mailbox. I love snail mail, so I know many people do as well, but this personalization it's a small gesture that can make a really big impact, don't you think?
Absolutely. And that's a terrific idea. It's so easy, it's affordable. Remember, you need to continue attracting new donors to your organization. You can't stop that entirely, but don't sacrifice retention for the sake of acquisition. It's easier to retain them and it gives you a higher return on your investment. And that postcard is a really great way to say, we see you.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today.
Yes.
I think we've learned that it's absolutely crucial to recognize that donor stewardship should be a top priority or the top priority, and that taking the time to genuinely connect with your donors and express that gratitude can create a really lasting impact. Treat your donors like they're valued partners on your mission. Show them genuine appreciation, keep them engaged year round, and make those personal connections that go beyond that transactional relationship. And by doing so, you can really create a community of passionate supporters who are more likely to stick around for the long haul. Oh, and before we wrap up, don't forget to check out the show notes for a downloadable donor stewardship checklist. It's a handy resource packed with actionable tips to help you nurture your donor relationships and boost that retention. So go ahead and grab that checklist and start transforming your donor engagement strategies.
Thank you, Jenna. I really do think that this is important because retention matters. Loyalty is the key to success of any business, including fundraising. And if we continue to treat our supporters as valued partners, like you just said, we will be at the top of their list of giving priorities this year. If we do not, they may give elsewhere. So if you do just one thing, let it be this. Delight your donors during this season. Do something unexpected and genuine. That time and energy spent on creating meaningful touches with existing donors right now will pay off when you ask for support in the months ahead. So thank you, Jenna. Thank you so much for sharing those insights and your time today. As always, it's really great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, Cara.
And thank you for choosing to spend time with the Nonprofit Podcast. I hope you've left with confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Be sure to click the download button on your podcast player, then leave the Nonprofit Podcast a review or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review is a really great way to help others find us. You're here to help others, and we're here to help you. So until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, it's not just happiness, it's fulfillment. And we believe it should be available to everyone. From frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers, our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.